Number 66, Deputy Broughan.
Thanks, Lascan. Well, Minister, as you know, a number of occasions with yourself and the Taoiseach, I've mentioned the fact that Dublin Bay North constituency it has the largest number of social housing waiting lists in the country, and that obviously in September nationally we had 3 families becoming homeless every day, and weekend after weekend I meet families with children often who are sofa surfing, who are living in very overcrowded, that 35,000 who are living in very overcrowded conditions, of course in hubs, in hotels, in guest houses, and indeed of course living in cars. And I just wonder what's the or trying to live in cars as the weather begins to turn. So I mean, what kind of hope can somebody like myself give those families as we come up to the Christmas period, particularly people who are in the offer zone, to expedite the situation? And have you any plans to drastically improve the delivery of social homes in Dublin?
Thank you, Lascan Corlin. Thank you, Deputy, for the question. The provision and allocation of social housing supports is a matter for each housing authority in accordance with its allocation scheme, and my department provides the policy and the legislative instruments, along with the financial support, schemes and resources necessary for local authorities to provide the relevant housing services in their areas. As the Deputy will be aware, social housing delivery targets have been set and published for all local authorities for this year. And in relation to the 4 Dublin local authorities, the overall target for 2018 is for the delivery of some 10,423 housing supports, which includes 2,033 built homes, 377 acquisitions and 790 leased homes, as well as 7,223 supports through HAP and through RAS. Of this target, at the end of the second quarter of this year, a total of 3,462 housing supports had been provided to households across Dublin. This does not include households accommodated through routine relettings by the councils, which are not supported by funding from my department. The Housing Assistance Payment, or HAP, continues to work as a very responsive and immediate scheme, delivering much-needed housing solutions for families and individuals nationwide, particularly in the Dublin region. Indeed, the number of new HAP tenancies set up across the 4 Dublin local authorities at the end of the second quarter of this year was 2,482. My department engages with all local authorities on a regular basis regarding the delivery of social housing. This includes structured quarterly meetings to review progress and, in the case of the 4 Dublin local authorities, monthly meetings are held. I'm confident that the actions, targets and resources available to all local authorities, including the 4 Dublin ones, under Rebuilding Ireland, provide a very strong platform for meeting our challenges in the housing sector, and I'm satisfied that overall delivery of the plan remains firmly on track. Thank you.
1 minute.
Families that are suffering in overcrowding or in emergency accommodation is totally different. I mean, probably like yourself, and I know you're a former city councillor, I think like myself, I'm an avid reader of the housing and the chief executive reports for Dublin City and for Fingal. And would you find that those reports, in fact, very frustrating, Minister, and very depressing? I mean, I'm just looking at the Dublin City housing report for November, the 2015-17, where a grand total of 300 houses were delivered on the construction side, and almost no Part 5 houses over that period. And if you look at the period 2018 to 2021, again, they're fairly dismal projections against the 8,000 or 9,000 on the housing list in Dublin Bay North constituency. And of course, your whole emphasis is on HAP and is on temporary and insecure accommodation. Or even if I look at the Fingal County Manager's report there for October, and I know he was with the Taoiseach yesterday, again, his delivery programme in social housing construction is poor. Delivered to date 133 units, total construction 745, but you know, tender stage, pre-planning approval and so on and so forth. Isn't this desperately frustrating, Minister, for the thousands who are on the housing list? And as you know, 68% of all homeless in this country are in the Dublin region. Having your responsibility to do something about delivery.
Thank you, Lascan Corlin, and thank you, Deputy, for your further reply. Of course I've got a responsibility. I'm the Minister for Housing, and that's why I meet with the local authorities. That's why we provided additional money for them for next year to provide more homes. 10,000 more social housing homes will come into the stock of social housing next year because of commitments that we've made in the budget for next year. Next year will be the most amount of money an Irish government has ever spent in a single year on housing. That's a very important commitment. Delivery is key. I was out in Fingal recently, and we went through the delivery and what they're going to achieve, and I've been with the other local authorities as well very recently and met with them in my own department to talk about things around delivery, not just for people in emergency accommodation, but also their wider delivery targets. You know, if you look at the different local authorities, in that 10,000, just over 10,000 figure breakdown that I gave to you, Dublin City Council will deliver over 1,000 homes on the build side. Dunleary, over about 180 homes on the build side. Fingal, more than 400. South Dublin, just under 400, just on the build side alone. But in acquisitions and leasing, which are real homes people will move into and have security in, they will be added to by more than 1,000 as well. And yes, we have to use HAP. Yes, we have to use the private rental sector, because if we didn't, those people will be out in the streets. So until we have more homes built, we'll use HAP to support them. But in 2020 and 2021, we'll be supporting more people into new homes in the stock of social housing than we'll be supporting through HAP in the private rental market. And that commitment continues through Project Ireland 2040 out to 2027. That's what we're doing.
But surely it's very frustrating, Minister, and when you do meet managers, and I know you were out in Fingal recently, that people will say, are there not steps you can take, for example, in relation to the rigmarole of tendering procedures? I mean, for example, I'm looking at the Chief Executive, the Dublin City Chief Executive's report for this month, for November, and he's talking about two major sites in my constituency, at Oscar Traynor Road, and a second site, I think, around Belmain. And all of these sites, they seem to be in a desperate, turgid, agonisingly slow pipeline. We've been told about pipelines. You're saying the same thing, Minister, going down to 2021. But you can't live in a pipeline. You need to have, you need to have output houses coming on stream, and it's simply not happening. And I mean, yesterday I think one of the papers was the Irish Times said your housing policy, it's failing. It's failing. What's happened in rents? A recipe for disaster, because you're not prepared to introduce a rent freeze. So, Minister, I mean, there's real suffering here. I know you're aware of it, but we need a sense of urgency. You need to come in here and start adopting some emergency powers. There's no other way.
Minister's final response.
Thank you, Lesley Corla, and thank you, Deputy, for your further reply. Of course I'm frustrated. Everyone who's involved at the moment in trying to solve this problem is frustrated. We wish we could build houses more quickly. But there are things that we have done to fast-track that process, like the fast-track planning process, an emergency response that's seen thousands of homes get planning permission in a much shorter timeline, or other responses that we've put in place, like the new procurement frameworks, because we can't get around procurement law because it's there to protect the public interest. There's 4,000 homes. Deputy,
Minister didn't interrupt.
There are 4,000 homes currently being constructed, social housing homes on site. This year, 20,000 new homes will be provided in the economy. That's a huge increase on last year, and it will increase again next year.
Please, the Minister without interruption.
Yesterday, one of your colleagues brought in place a proposed private member's bill that talked about declaring an emergency and having that in place for 3 years. Why? Because we cannot solve this overnight. It does require time, but for the last 2 years, we've been changing planning, procurement process, we've been hiring more staff, and as a result of the work that's gone in over the last 2 years, the supply of new homes is ramping up dramatically. That said, until we have those new homes, of course we will put in extra protections for renters, like we will with the new bill that's coming, like the regulations of short-term lettings, and of course we'll increase funding and support and services for those who are most vulnerable, people sleeping rough on our streets, families in emergency accommodation. That's what we did with the budget. That's where the money goes.
Deputy Anna Sullivan to present.